Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Bedstone, NASCAR Sky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, race fans, to another episode of Mash the Gas. I'm NASCAR Sky. Joining me shortly, Kevin Batstone and Jeff Davis. We're here to recap the Cookout 400 in Martinsville, where Chase Elliott got Hendrick's first win of the season. And then we're going to take a little break next week, but then in 2 weeks we'll be over in Bristol, Tennessee for the Food City 500. But before we get into all that, I got to ask Jeff, who mashed the gas the hardest?
Well, like you mentioned, definitely Chase Elliott, 22nd career win, and like you mentioned, the first win of the year for Hendrick Motorsports. So that's quite impressive. He didn't lead the most laps. I really thought Denny Hamlin was going to run away with this one, leading 292 laps. But Chase Elliott did have 84 laps led. And as we're going to talk about, it was those fresh set of tires that got him there. So I don't know if it was luck or was it Gustafson, guys?
Well, I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I mean, it took 7 races for Chevrolet to find victory lane. I didn't really have Chase Elliott going out and winning this race. I mean, we saw those first 2 stages. Denny Hamlin was just lights out fastest lap of the race, led 292 laps, and then just kind of beat himself there at the end. And he took ownership of that on his podcast today, just saying that he didn't fire off good on that restart. And the 9 was just in the right place, right time. You got to take advantage of those situations. And so, if it didn't go well, Gustafson would have been chastised by all the Elliott fans. But because it kind of fell into the lap of the 9, he looks like the hero now. And Jeff Gordon did come to his defense today at their Monday morning meeting. So all in all, that's a big win for the 9 guys. Good finish in Martinsville, gets that grandfather clock.
Yeah, I think it almost reminds me of what Tyler Reddick did last week, or the 45 team, where they pulled the car down early and fixed the battery. They were like, we have a good car. Let's just get it done early. And I think that's kind of the same thing. Elliott was complaining about not being too happy and his tires are falling off. So they, the 19 decided, let's go ahead and pull him down, get new tires. And ultimately that worked out in his favor, being up there. I mean, the reason you do stuff like that is to kind of hope cautions fall that way. And most of the time they don't, but boy, when they do, it works out pretty well.
Yeah, he definitely did a good job. I saw something earlier before the race that said, speaking of the grandfather clock, which is my favorite trophy in NASCAR, when you win at Martinsville, it's time well spent. So I thought that was pretty cool. But, as far as Chase Elliott, I think Hendrick always has a great chance of winning, at least one of his drivers winning this race. Jeff Gordon was the king at it. I mean, he has admitted in the past that, hey, I don't know these new cars like these guys do, but he knows to tell them where to hit your marks. No one's done it better than Jeff. He had 47 starts in Martinsville. He had 9 career wins, and his average finish there was 6.74, and he's led 3,779. So just, having that much information from the man himself, Jeff Gordon, I think really helps Hendrick out at Martinsville.
Well, it certainly does. I mean, you got a guy like Gordon that knew how to run it. I mean, sure, it's a different car. It's a different horsepower package. And speaking of that, I mean, I think that this new package so far has proven to, we were not really seeing the tire fall off that I thought we were going to see at some of these short tracks. We'll see what we get to in Bristol in 2 weeks. That's where we've seen a lot of tire fall off. But I like this 750 package. I do think that the drivers are slipping and sliding around a little bit more, kind of put some more back into the driver's hands. They're able to kind of use that race car. Bubba Wallace got a little aggressive using his race car, though, where he decided to wreck himself and just drive straight through the 77. He's like, I'm just not going to lift in between turns 3 and 4. He did kind of own it in his post-race interview. Denny clearly put it on him as well. That's his driver. Just kind of a boneheaded move there by Bubba.
When they were talking about on the broadcast, they were saying how he did go 3 wide. Hosvar did put Bubba 3 wide, but how that still didn't really warrant the type of racing that Bubba did there. But it got me thinking, and my dad and I were texting during the race about this too. I wonder if it is just a product of, all the other drivers seeing how Hocevar is. I mean, Hocevar is constantly making moves like that. I mean, how many times has he done something similar, but just been really, really aggressive? Give, no take. Other drivers we talk about all the time. I mean, they take notice of that. And it makes me wonder, maybe that 3 wide and that little instance during Martinsville maybe didn't warrant the type of racing that Bubba did. But maybe I'm thinking Bubba, like as a whole, just kind of looks back and just realizes that Hocevar is just kind of that way. I thought that that's kind of what I was thinking. Because at first I was like, dang, Bubba, that was kind of crazy. But then I'm like, that's Hocevar. I mean, if it was flipped, I can almost see Hocevar being Bubba in that instance and driving through someone else, So I don't know. I don't want to see anybody wreck I don't really like that all the time. It sucks. I mean, a lot of it's more than just the drivers in the car. I mean, there's teams and everybody else that goes into it. So it sucks for them. But, I just think Carson, when you race a certain way, other drivers, they're going to race you a certain way.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like, what comes around goes around. And I think that's what the 77 actually got a little bit of. I know him and Bubba they kind of bumped into each other a little bit during the race earlier. So I don't know if that had something to do with it. But I thought it was a total boneheaded move, just plowing right through him, created a lot of cars torn up. And ruined a lot of people's days. So unfortunate situation, but he kind of chalked it up. Hey, I made a mistake, and I thought he kind of tried to play it off almost, not like I'm kind of taking fault at it, but I just misjudged it, is what he basically said. So yeah, unwarranted, but like you mentioned, Sky, the 77, he's going to get bits and pieces thrown at him from other drivers all the time because of the way he has been running for the last year and a half. So again, it's unfortunate, but I'll tell you what I was kind of hoping had a little bit better of a day was Brad Keselowski, having his 600th career start. I was wanting to see him do a little bit better. He finished P13, but I just wanted to throw out that because, as we talked about, RFK's actually been doing really well these last few races, and I think they're gonna be up there winning races soon.
They continue to improve for sure. We know the Sky took Ryan Preece to win this race last week, and he was pretty much just right outside the top 10 for most of the race. I felt like, didn't quite get the qualifying position he needed. I was a little bit surprised that the 22 was able to get up there and run well. He didn't lead any laps up there, Sky, but he was able to turn a great day. A top 5 finish after having just a terrible day in Darlington. Definitely needed to turn that around. When we bounce over to the point standings here, obviously Tyler Reddick still off to a pretty good start here with 82-point lead over Ryan Blaney. Biggest loser this week looked like Bubba Wallace to me. He dropped all the way to 11th in points. I mean, that just goes to show you how quickly a DNF is going to really, really kind of knock you down way out of the chase contention. Joey Logano moved up 4th position. So, we're still early. We're 7 races in. We got the Easter break coming up, and then we'll reset in Bristol. But these points are going to matter.
They definitely are, and it's back to RFK. Actually, I was looking at this when I was writing down in my little notes. RFK, I think, is the only team, let me double check here, that has all of their drivers in the playoffs are, oh my gosh, someone take the P word out of my system, the chase standings. I mean, they got all of their drivers in right now. No other team has that. So whatever they're doing is working. It's going pretty well. And I know you mentioned me with Preece. I did want to bring up, I think we did pretty good last week, all 3 of us. Your driver, Kevin, he finished 6th, and then the 5 finished 9th. So, we were onto something last week. I guess we kind of do know what we're talking about a little bit.
It's always fun to throw those picks out there. And I know we'll get into Bristol here in a little bit later. But RFK, they're doing really good. They're doing stuff that's working for them. One thing I wanted to talk about with RFK though is they might be losing their charter for their 3rd car, and so they're looking for somewhere else to get it. I know right now they're leasing one from Rick Ware, and I believe Rick Ware is going to be sending that over to Legacy Motorsports next year in 27. So not sure where they're going to get it from and how that's going to work out. And speaking of Legacy Motorsports, did you guys hear about old Darius Rucker just joined the ownership with Jimmy Johnson and Richard Petty?
Old Hootie and the Blowfish himself, huh?
You got it. Three-time
He's
Grammy
my favorite. So I love it so much.
It's awesome. I love seeing new people come into the sport as owners because we've talked about how we don't want to see it go corporate, like totally corporate, like F1 kind of. So I'm stoked to see him in there. He seems like it'll be a good addition and a great guy too. So it's good to see it.
Yeah, that's exciting for that organization. I mean, we haven't seen the finishes out of Eric Jones or John Hunter Nemechek that I'm sure that those guys are hoping for. Since they made that alliance move from Chevrolet over to Toyota, I feel like out of all of Toyota racing, they've definitely struggled the hardest, and definitely still have an uphill battle there. So, that's pretty cool though. Darius Rucker coming in as a, 3rd owner now, kind of like what, RFK did, bringing in Keselowski as a part owner with Fenway, my home area, and all that. So it's cool to see the ownership move around, see different money come in, get different eyes on the sport. And Darius Rucker, hey, he jams.
He really does. I listen to him every day. I love him so much. You were mentioning earlier with the horsepower and everything. As a NASCAR fan this season, I feel so just feels like such a breath of fresh air. We have a lot of new things coming. Everything just seems to be going well. NASCAR, I feel like, has been doing really, really well. But I did want to say something that I wish they would do. Back the caution that happened, it to me it was set up just so sus. I do think that there was debris 100%. I just wish that you would show it, like show the fans what the caution's for, not just something that's on pit road. Like maybe that was it. Maybe it just because it was on pit road that caused the caution. Maybe I'm unfamiliar with that. I don't know. To me, they were literally setting it up so perfect. I just wish that they would bring us in more and be like, look, this is what the caution happened. Not just, hey, there's a caution. Coincidentally, the broadcasters are like, oh, Chase Elliott's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. He has to pit. And then it was a caution. So I'm sure it was just really good timing for Chase Elliott. But I just wish NASCAR would bring the fans in the lore. Let us know what's going on,
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there for sure. I mean, we saw the 10 going down the back straightaway. He was smoking. He had a brake rotor come apart. What we didn't see was any debris on the actual racetrack. It wasn't on the front straight or the back straightaway. It was right at the end of pit road where they did put a camera on, the guy with a shovel scooped it up, got it out of the way, which, to be fair, they do need to keep pit road clean there. I just wonder, because this race seems so green flag, a lot of green flag laps, would this caution have been overlooked if we were looking at what we saw in the O'Reilly Auto Parts race on Saturday with 13 caution flags? Does it kind of play into that? Because we've seen this happen before with time windows and, we have these races that have gone long green flag runs. We typically see, a car brush the wall and they'll throw a yellow for it where we won't see it in other situations, or, vice versa. If there's been too many cautions, then now they're just going to overlook the piece of debris on pit road. So, consistency is going to be key there. But I think overall, at the end of the day, they did get the call right, Jeff, with picking up that brake rotor off of pit road.
Yeah, they definitely needed to do it. And I thought it was kind of funny. Ryan Blaney kind of called out NASCAR for actually rigging the race for Chase Elliott. Crew chief said, I ain't seen nothing but apparently a brake rotor on pit road. So you are definitely correct there. And then, old Blaney threw out there, he's like, yeah, they threw a caution for a brake rotor on pit road. That's hilarious. And he made it like sarcastically saying it too. So I don't think there was any mischievous stuff going on there. But I did find it hella funny that Ryan Blaney would come out and say that. And speaking of Penske, how about Cindric? He's had his first few races he didn't do very well, and then the last 4 races, he's really been stepping up there. I mean, he was almost bottom in points down there by Alex Bowman. Now he's in P18, I believe, in points overall. So I think Penske had a really good day as well. Sky, you should love that.
Yeah, it was really good. All the drivers, and I include Josh Berry, so whether you want to include him or not, all the drivers got top 10. So I thought that was really good, especially for Cindric. It's always nice to see him improve. I mean, Ryan Blaney is top notch at the moment. You can't really get much better than the 12 car. The pit crew, definitely needs to get better, but the 12 car is pretty solid. It was a pretty good day for them, and I'm happy that Cindric's moving on up. I was looking at that, and I was noticing like Connor Zilic is still really low, because I like to see kind of who's staying in the same spot, who's going up, who's going down. But Zilic, I don't want to say I fear too much for him. I still don't, but he's not making a whole lot of progress. He's still staying pretty bottom barrel. I thought he'd be a little bit more improved. Especially you look at the 97, which most people probably didn't think would be doing all that well on the ovals. I don't know. I'm still not too worried. I don't think we need to set an alarm off or anything for the 88, but it's definitely interesting.
Well, when you look at Trackhouse, SVG is outperforming everybody at Trackhouse Racing, right? He's in the best points position. He's qualified 5th here in Martinsville, finished P11. SVG is improving overall as a driver. And we talked about this last year with him being the road course ringer and how this package continues to evolve, whether it's him falling into his, number of 97 or whatever it is, the stars are aligning. And SVG has had noticeably better finishes and performances on Saturday during practice and qualifying, and turning those into good finishes on Sunday on his ovals. And that's just going to help him overall. I mean, he's sitting 14th in points right now. His teammate Ross Chastain back there in 19th. And Connor Zilic is in his freshman year trying to figure out what's going on. We had mentioned him last week a little bit, but we'll see what happens when we get to some more of these road courses. But I just think Trackhouse as an organization, Jeff, just doesn't have the speed yet.
They don't, but like you said, OSVG, I'm going to give him props too. Finishing P11 there. Like you mentioned, top of the crew for their stable, and obviously he did a lot of practice. So I see him being in the playoffs. All he needs is a couple wins and keep consistently running or finishing around 15th or above on ovals. He'll be in the playoffs for sure. So and like I said, I like the guy too. He's just got that great attitude. His accent, he always just sounds happy all the time. But with one of Sky's guys, her favorite, the 22, I did want to mention he's got, as far as active streaks, he has finished 13 races at Martinsville for the last 10 years. So he's got something going on. I was kind of surprised Joey didn't. Well, he finished P3, so I can't complain too much. But he just didn't have enough what it took to get by Hamlin or Chase Elliott.
Yeah, he did say in his interview after he got out of the car that he didn't think that his 22 was any different than the 9. He was like, the 9 just had fresh air. So he said, if I could have got out there, I maybe could have pulled away and won. But I think he should be happy with third, especially like Kevin said, how bad Darlington was last week. A third is perfect. Get back up into the standings, because I think he was out after Darlington. But yeah, I'm glad for Joey. I'm definitely gonna like that. I'm not gonna argue at all with that. When I was looking earlier, when I was writing down the standings and I was going through, like I said, comparing everybody, this is a little off topic, but Noah Gragson, we don't talk about him much, but I don't know if that's a good thing. He's really low now. I would say it's expected, but I'm not the biggest Gregson fan. I don't know how many years he's been in the Cup Series. I want to say it's probably like 4, maybe 4 or 5. He doesn't have much to show for it. I mean, how much longer does somebody like him stay around,
There was still some optimism that there was going to be speed out of these race cars, but we just haven't seen it. I mean, he's sitting basically in points where he finishes every week. He finished 28th here in Martinsville. He's 29th in points. So out of the Ford camp, I would say he's got to be at the bottom of the barrel as far as just speed, consistency, qualifying position, and just overall laps out on the racetrack. And gets caught up in wrecks because he's always in the hornet's nest. And I think you're right, Sky. There is cause for concern with that camp over there.
Going back to Connor Zillich a minute ago, he got caught up in that wreck, and he made a comment that I saw today, where he said that was one of the hardest hits he had, and his head hurt. He said it effing hurt so bad, and he said these cars are so stiff that he's not used to these Cup cars yet, and we know this because a lot of times we're seeing I can't even talk today, beating and banging. We used to see a lot more damage on these cars, but these next gen cars, they are stiff. And I think that's where we're seeing some injuries come into play.
Yeah, well, hopefully they can stay healthy, and you don't want to mess with your head. That's for sure. So hopefully they're taking all the precautions to make sure he doesn't have a concussion or anything. Cause we've seen that play out before, and I don't want to see it. He's so young. It's so early in his career. It's just not worth it to injure yourself and then to keep going, especially when your season, there could be, you could definitely rebound still. There's still a lot of races left. But I don't know. He only has 80 points. And then you look at, in which it's really hard to compare because Tyler Reddick has so many points because he's won so many races. But, Tyler Reddick's like over 300 points and you only got 80. Like, I don't know. It's tough. But hopefully they can get it all together over there. I felt like they started out pretty strong, Trackhouse. I thought the first few races, we kept mentioning Ross Chastain's name. But yeah, especially the one car. I mean, the one car has fallen off relatively bad. I mean, I don't even remember much that he did in this race, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, like I said, I think Trackhouse is just a little bit off on speed. I mean, I was surprised to see, SVG qualify as well as he did. The road course guys do typically run well at Martinsville. It's a similar braking pattern. But just overall, we're seeing SVG kind of carry the torch for Trackhouse. But, it's still early. I don't think it's too soon for these guys to start panicking and hitting the panic button. And, there's still opportunities to turn this thing around. We got Bristol coming up in 2 weeks. We've got Kansas getting back to some of the mile and a halves. We get to the Coke 600. There's some optimism for these guys that they've had success at some of these racetracks in the past. But overall, Martinsville delivered again. It was a great race. I thought the O'Reilly Series race was fantastical. Justin Allgaier going out there and getting the win. Junior Motorsports is just absolutely unbelievable. They've won 5 in a row now, just killing it over there. They just full domination, Jeff. They have found something, and Junior knows how to pick great talent, and they're bringing some of the fastest race cars to the track I've ever seen.
Well, it doesn't hurt being an affiliate of Mr. H. They're getting great equipment. Those guys know how to tune cars up. So I think, yeah, Junior Motorsports, they do have it going on. I also wanted to bring up Kyle Busch because we know he has not been running very well at all. And he's not doing too bad in points. Like I said, nothing to stress over, but he's 24th in points. And that's about where he finished. Actually, he did finish in 24th place for the race. So I think there's some concern there. We've talked about it. Is he going to be going somewhere else? Most likely. We don't know where yet, but there's going to be some seats to fill, I think. Like Sky was mentioned with the 4-car, Noah Gragson. If you keep running like that, you're not going to have a contract. And I don't know if his contract's up this year or not. I don't know if it's this year or next year. But if he doesn't start getting some really good finishes, I don't see him in his seat.
I'm about to say a bunch of silly season things. I know it's early, but I was thinking about this whenever we were talking about Justin Allgaier winning in the O'Reilly series. Allgaier would be another, I don't know exactly what his contract is right now, but he would be another, I think, pretty strong contender for the 48. I mean, probably even a little stronger than, Kyle Busch, because he already has the alliance there. He's the one who's filling in right now. But I was thinking about that. I mean, he would be another one that I think could be a good transitional thing. I know that he's already been in the Cup Series before, and how you were mentioning earlier about RFK needing another charter. This is really left field, but I'll tell you who needs to get rid of that. 2311 needs to get rid of that 35 car, because I don't think much is happening, especially when your other two are doing so good. You know what? Cut back to a 2-car team, and then there you go. There you go for Ryan
That's
Freese.
not too bad of an idea right there, Sky. I kind of agree with you. I think that would be great.
Yeah, we're just at that point now, after this antitrust lawsuit and the way that these charters work, there's a lot of moving parts. We mentioned Darius Rucker coming in to Legacy as an owner now. There's just a little bit more, freedom and contracts and negotiating that can go on to move some of these charters around. It's really interesting to follow, and we've speculated already so far this year on who's going where. Is Bowman coming back? Where does Kyle Busch go? But I think Kyle Busch has just reached maximum, I don't give an F mode. He just seems to be showing up at the racetrack like he doesn't give a shit about anything.
Yeah, 100%. You can just see it in his face. So, but hey, I had one of our friends, one of my friends out here, actually asked me. He's like, "Hey, I listen to your podcast. I want to ask the panel a question, and I know my answer on it, but my buddy's asking, do you think the 54 car will make the playoffs?"
100%.
Yeah, he would have to have a lot of bad days in a row, I think, maybe to not make it. But that's one of the guys this year I'll say has surprised me the most.
Very
Absolutely.
consistent. Very consistent.
I think he's going to do it. I really do. He got a really good finish this week, getting 4th place there. He's doing really well in points. He's sitting 6th in points. I think Ty Gibbs is going to be in the playoffs for sure. But yeah, my buddy's like, "Hey, ask the panel." I'm like, "All right, buddy, I will." So there you go.
The chase, you mean? You guys both call it the playoffs. It's the chase.
Yeah, it's the chase, the playoffs. Hey, I still
I know,
call
and
it
I'm so
nationwide.
glad that it's not the playoffs anymore. I would stop saying it?
I know. We're all glad it's not the playoffs anymore. So, I'm just still excited to see how it's going to pan out. We've speculated on, you got to be in the top 8 to really have a legitimate threat at it. But we just don't know how this thing's going to shake out. Tyler Reddick sure won 4 out of the first 6. But what if we have a guy, I'll give you guys my pick right now for Bristol in 2 weeks. I'm going to go ahead and say Ty Gibbs gets his first Cup Series win in Bristol. What if he gets hot and goes on a 4 or 5 race win streak and takes over the point lead? It's just so unpredictable and just so different now that we've gotten rid of this win and you're in.
When I was looking at the standings, like you sit and you see like Brad Keselowski and stuff in there, and it's just, I wonder if I don't know. I just don't think that somebody like him would be in the playoffs, So it's interesting to see how all the points are shaped. Are shuffling all the drivers. I don't know. I agree. I'm just excited to see where this goes. I already like it more. We got the horsepower. Like I've been optimistic about this season, and I'm still extremely optimistic. I feel like it is going to be a really good one. I do think there is a good chance that Tyler Reddick ends up running away with it early on, but you know what? So be it.
Hey, someone could go on the heater. Look, remember when Tony Stewart beat out Carl Edwards? Actually, they tied for the exact number of points, but Tony Stewart had like 6 wins during the playoffs. So something like that could happen. Ty Gibbs, maybe he does go on a run. He's got great equipment and he's been running well. And you were kind of talking about Brad Keselowski. He's actually tied. This is crazy that we've got what 1, 2, 3, 4 drivers that are tied for basically 8th place, and that would be Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson, Chris Buescher, and Bubba Wallace. Bubba did drop down in points, like we saw it, and that's what happens when you get in these wrecks. And that was just, like I said again, that was just a boneheaded move. I don't know what he was thinking, because it dropped him down quite a few. And you got to place well if you're going to continue to stay at the top.
Yeah, I think that was a good example of how we can see a guy drop really quickly. With one real bad day, a DNF can do to your points position. Because he was right there with his teammate. It was 23-11 dominating the points, until Blaney got up there. But, that's just the way this thing's going to shake out. You have to run consistently all year long, all year strong. Reddick's obviously in a position, if he goes out and has a mechanical failure or something like that, he has that cushion. But I think it's going to be so tough the deeper we get into this season, the closer we get, to the start of the chase, to dig out of a hole. And that's where it's going to be really tough for Alex Bowman, who, as we sit right now, will not be running Bristol. He's going to sit out one more race and then return for Kansas, which you and I will be there, courtesy of Toyota Racing. So we're looking forward to that. But, Bowman's going to have a lot to dig out of for sure. We've seen Allgaier, kind of fill in. Allgaier does great on Saturday. O'Reilly comes over and tries to run that 48, isn't seeing a lot of success with it. So it's going to be tough to hop back in that race car. But like we said last week, most important first is driver safety and health.
Bowman, when he does get back into the car, in my opinion, he probably shouldn't worry necessarily about like the standings or maybe a championship. I think that you need to go in and you need to prove like, I deserve this ride. I deserve to be here. So whether that's, winning some races, whether that's just consistently finishing in the top 10 or outperforming his teammates, I think that his agenda should be slightly different. I mean, granted, you're always going to want to win the championship and it should still be on his mind, but I think that would come in due time when you focus on everything else, and kind of just get it back together. I know that he can be competitive. He's shown it before. I mean, he won the freaking Chicago street race. I mean, I don't think many people had him on the radar to win that. So I know he's got it in him. I hope that he comes back healthy, he stays healthy, and he can make something happen.
Absolutely. That Chicago win for him was super cool. The guy's got talent. Otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting in Hendrick's stable at all. He just doesn't have the wins that the other guys do at this point. But you're right, Sky. He wants to win the championship. He's going to do his hardest. But you're right. He needs to go out there and just prove I deserve this ride. So he needs to get a lot of good finishes. Whether he's in the top 5 or not doesn't really matter. I think just run, do well, hit your marks, and hopefully he's getting better soon. We'll see him in a few weeks and see how it shakes up for him there.
That's all he can do, get back in the saddle, and let her rip.
Yeah, let her rip. Kevin, you said you are going to go with Ty Gibbs for next week?
In 2 weeks, I'm going to go. Yeah, that is my early pick. We do have on-track action this weekend. Friday, we got the trucks out there at Rockingham, and then the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Rockingham on Saturday, which I think is going to be exciting. We got Cletus McFarland making his O'Reilly Auto Parts debut with RCR. Kind of an interesting and both controversial move on the track. I know Kyle Busch had comments about it and some others. Carson Hocevar made comments. I've been following Cletus McFarland since his YouTube channel debuted in 2017, and I think it's just really exciting for him to see what he's been able to do. But, a lot of these old timers, talking about you got to earn it, work your way up through the ranks. Cletus hasn't really done that. He's taken a very different approach. And I think that he's going to have a difficult race ahead of him on Saturday, no question. But if he can get a top 20 out of this thing, Jeff, I think that'd be a good debut.
Absolutely would, and I know, like you mentioned, Kyle Busch and some of the other drivers are, hey, you got to grind it through, work your way up. I think, was it Kevin Harvick or was it Kyle Busch that said, hey, my kids ran more races than he has.
Yeah,
but
that was Kyle. Yeah,
that was Kyle. That's what I thought. But great stuff. I mean, he's a character. I hope he goes in there and get a top 20. That's all I'm like looking out for him. I don't think he's going to get a top 5 or anything like that. But Sky, are you ready to give out your pick for next week?
No, you got to go first.
I have to go first. Okay.
Yeah, I went second last time.
All right. So I hate to go back to back, but I'm doing it for a specific reason. I am going with the 5 car of Kyle Larson. Is that
somebody take the 5 from him?
So, well, hey, listen here, Jack. It says so right here on this piece of paper.
No, I don't blame you.
Yeah, it was he had 411 laps out of 500. Last year in the spring race. That's a lot of laps to lead. So that's the reason why I'm going to be going with Kyle Larson in 2 weeks.
Well, when you go to the fall race, Jeff, old Kyle Larson finished 32nd. So
he did.
I see where you're at there. And I already gave my pick out earlier, but I'll echo it. I'm going to say Ty Gibbs goes out and gets his first Cup Series win, led over 220 laps at this race. Running really well. The short track package dialed in. We talked about it earlier. Consistency is key. I think he goes and gets it done.
I don't know. I'm going to go with this, and I don't want to go with this answer, but I'm going to go with the 24 of, I'm going to call him Billy Byron from now on as well. So Billy Byron and the 24, that's who's going to win.
You're going to take old Billy B, huh?
I didn't see that pick coming from Sky. That one's a little bit surprising. She doesn't typically go Hendrick.
I thought she was going to go with Ryan Blaney since he had P5 in the spring race last year.
I thought about Blaney, but how many times do we use Blaney, Larson, Blaney? So I tried to pick someone different. That's been my MO this season. I try to pick someone different.
Yeah, I'm going to say the only time I've picked Kyle Larson so far this year, I think, was twice. And then I was out one race and Kevin picked him for me. So that's my defense.
Hey, I'm taking Ty Gibbs. He's never even won a Cup race, but I think he's going to get it done.
Yours is a good pick, too. Ty Gibbs, truth be told, was actually who I was thinking of before I got on the show.
Well, there you have it.
But you took it from me. You like to do that. You like to go first.
Yeah, hey, we all think alike a little bit. We see, we're picking drivers in the top 10 every time.
Early bird gets the worm on these picks.
Yeah, so if you're not listening, guys, you're missing out because we know what we're talking about over here.
We certainly do. And we appreciate all of our listeners tuning in each week. Keep sending in your questions. Keep having fun with us on social media. Sky, you do a great job over there of keeping us afloat. You're much better at that than I am.
And me. I'm too old to do all that stuff. Sky's on it. Love it.
It's okay. Someone popped into my live. I seen that.
That was me.
Yeah, I seen that. I was like, look, Mash the Gas is in here, guys.
Yeah.
We were all saying who we thought wasn't going to win. And I said Cody Ware, and I was right. Very right.
Cody Ware. You're making picks on who's not going to win? That's pretty funny.
Yep.
That's
Someone
stuff like
said Danica
that.
Patrick. I said,
Danica
she's not going to win either.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Those are the good old days.
I don't know. Don't jinx it now.
Well, I think one thing we can agree on in 2 weeks, Bristol is pretty consistent with drivers. We see a lot of repeat winners there. I think Brad Keselowski, if we're talking fantasy here and giving out some fantasy advice, I think, the RFK Fords are still good to keep in mind. Obviously, the JGR Toyotas, Hendrick Motorsports showing some speed. And then, if you really want to roll the dice, I'd say throw, Carson Hocevar in there. Old Hurricane's ready to get in there and kind of mix some things up. So that's obviously 2 weeks out. I'm sticking with Ty Gibbs. I think he's going to go win this thing. What do we got? It's Easter. Happy Passover to everyone that celebrates this week. We'll be off next Monday night, back in 2 weeks to break down all of the action from the world's fastest half mile. Always a fun time there in Bristol. And then we'll be getting ready for Kansas, which we'll have more to come on that. Jeff, you and I are going to be out there for that. So we're looking forward to, some of these upcoming races and getting into the springtime. Weather's getting nice. Great time to, grab your friends, head to the racetrack. They sold 46,000 Martinsville hot dogs this weekend was the final count that I heard. So we got to get there, Sky. We got to get a little video, old hashtag Sky Eats Martinsville hot dogs when they get back there in the fall. I think that could be fun.
Love it.
It would be. I wonder if you laid all of the hot dogs down end to end, how long that would be.
It's definitely
more than the track.
How many loops around the track?
A couple laps around the track.
They need to start doing that. That's the stats I need to hear.
Oh, that's badass. I love it.
Yeah, that's fun. All right, well, we're going to get out of here. Enjoy the off weekend. Watch a little bit of the O'Reilly race this Saturday. That should be fun. And we'll be, like I said, back in 2 weeks. Follow us on all social media platforms at Mash the Gas. Follow Sky over there at NASCAR Sky. And until then, y'all.
Happy Easter and Mash the Gas.